This is the new American media.
Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles, to be specific. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Unhappy Hour Fantasy Football Edition 2013. I'm going to be your host, Brian Engelman, as I have been for 2.5 years. But if you've listened to us before, you would know that. We've had several guests over the past few years, and you can find those archived, and you should check them out. There's a lot of good content on all of our various sites. Want to run through them real quick? Check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. A lot of archive shows over there. Check them out. Go to youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia and subscribe. Check out 2.5 years of videos and radio shows and whatnot. A lot of different stuff. Sports and politics and spirituality and music, and just dig around. Lots of cool stuff. What else do we have? Facebook. Go on Facebook and search The New American Media and like the page. Comment on the stuff that we put out there. Connect. Because we do radio shows once a week, but we do all this stuff all week long. And on Twitter, go on Twitter and search at American_media_ and follow us. We'd appreciate that. What we're doing now is we're going to do a special edition of the Unhappy Hour because it's fantasy football time. Yes. I not to pat myself on the back. Yeah, I'm actually patting myself on the back. But I did win my fantasy football league last year. Yes? Thank you. Now that's just clapping, not my back again. But yes, I did win my fantasy football league, and we want to give a little bit of a cheat sheet, if you will. Some tips and suggestions and some ideas. And I can't think of anybody better to bring into the program. Can't think of anybody better than Mike Murray. And why do I say that? Well, the reason I say that is because Mike is the one that taught me what I know. He is. He's the one that taught me what I know. So let's see if we can get him into the program. Because, well, actually, we don't want to. Well, that's working well. Gotta love it. Here, let's try this again, shall we? It's kind of ridiculous. But Mike is the one. I've known Mike pretty much my whole life, and he is the man that taught me everything that I know about fantasy football. And that's why we're going to have him here. He's a guru when it comes to this. I don't know many people that know more about fantasy football than Mike. And so if you're trying to figure out how to win your league, that's what we're here for today. We can give you some tips, pointers, sleepers, players to avoid.
Hello.
Good morning, Mike. You're live on the air. How you doing?
Doing well, sir. How you doing?
Living the dream. Can't complain. How's Charlotte treating you?
Oh, Charlotte's treating me just fine. It's been a heck of a summer, a lot of thunderstorms, but looking forward to the fall and some fantasy football.
Hey, you know what? Before we get into it, I mean, when we founded this program, The Unhappy Hour, Sean, Flynn, and myself, we always used to say, all right, it's The Unhappy Hour. What are we drinking? I mean, we'd have craft beers, we'd have wine, we'd have cheap beer, we'd have liquor. I mean, the first few months, I mean, we were getting sauced on the air, let's just be honest, as we figured out what to do with the program. But you are quite the beer connoisseur as well. Tell me what's on your radar of top 3 beers that people should check out.
Well, you know, I'm always a big pumpkin beer fan. I actually just picked up 4 bottles of the Southern Tier Pumpkin yesterday. Probably my favorite pumpkin beer. It's really more of a pumpkin pie beer as a pumpkin spice beer. Another one I like a lot is the Founders Brewing Breakfast Porter. I'm sorry, Breakfast Stout, actually. That's excellent as well. So those are probably my top 2 right now.
Nice. Yeah, because every time I'm I'm scrolling through your profile, you're previewing a different beverage, a different craft beer. So yeah, I picked up some pumpkin ale the other day, and I'm like, oh, you know it's football time when you start seeing the pumpkin ale hit the shelves. I love this time of year. But let's get into some fantasy football, shall we? I was explaining to people that you are the fantasy football guru. How many leagues are you going to be in this year, Mike?
This is a new record for me. This is going to be 7 different leagues.
Ah! How in the world are you going to keep 7 teams sorted out in your brain? How do you do that?
Well, it's really just a process of starting on Monday. You know, you can't wait till the end of the week. You really need to do your research. You need to work the waiver wire. Kind of be proactive with your lineup. You know, maybe look into some trades and what have you. But one thing that I would caution that I've really gotten into the last couple seasons that hurt me was after the first couple weeks of the season, I started trading players because I wasn't happy, and then they started doing better. So that's my big thing for this year is to not trade players, you know, right away if I can.
See, you know what? I love the trade. I love making trades. I wish I could trade draft picks, actually. I wish I could trade out of the first round and stockpile second-round picks. Is there a way to trade picks in fantasy football? I've never tried that.
Yeah, there actually is an option under the league option. I know on ESPN that will allow draft pick trading. I assume Yahoo has the option. I'm not sure, but I've never seen that many people in my league trade draft picks. But the option's always been there for them.
Well, let me back up a step because we're talking maybe 200, mid 200 level knowledge that we're dropping. I want to start for the fantasy football rookie for a second because a couple years ago I was a rookie. And, you know, you were kind of my co-manager. And I was like, Mike, I want to do this, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And I know several people right now that want to join leagues, and then maybe they're starting to get intimidated. And I remember that feeling because I didn't know how the hell to play, how you win, how you build, you know. So let's start from the beginning. What are the different types of leagues that people can be invited to join? Because there's different strategies depending on the league that you're in.
Okay, yeah, I mean, from a real high level, I'll try to keep this short. Basically, the 2 main leagues that I've been in, and I've been doing this for at least 20 years, you have your standard league, which is just standard scoring, you know, and then you have your PPR league, which is point per reception league. So running backs and wide receivers, in addition to their other scoring they also get 1 point per reception, so that will boost their value. So yeah, basically standard league and PPR league, those are the 2 most popular leagues as far as I know.
And so then in the PPR league, there's a higher emphasis placed on the reception. So the running backs will come out having a larger value of according to their position. So they're not just getting touchdowns, they're not just getting their rushing yards. They're also picking up a bunch of points if they're catching 5, 6, 7, 8 passes per game. And so that changes who you want to draft in what order, right?
That's correct. I mean, there's a handful of running backs who specifically catch a lot of passes. The number 1 guy, you know, most years is Darren Sproles from the New Orleans Saints. I think last year he had, I think it was 75 or 80 receptions, which for a running back is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And then actually, I completely forgot, the third type of most popular fantasy football league is an auction-style league, where you basically, most leagues start with, you know, each team gets about $200 in quote-unquote fantasy money, and then everyone bids on players, and obviously when you're out of money, you know, but you have to fill a roster, so you just kind of have to strategize along the way.
Okay, yeah, I've never done the auction style. But you would say that the PPR and the standard are the more common league then. So that being said, when someone signs up for a team, you know, and one of the first things on all of these message boards, you get to talk smack. So everybody's running their mouths and trying to intimidate everybody else and just having fun and goofing around because a lot of it's, you know most of your friends that are in the league, and that's kind of why you stay in it. So let's talk about a drafting strategy. How in the world do you know who to pick and when to prioritize them? Who do you take in the 3rd round? Who do you wait for the 5th? Like, how does someone that doesn't know what they're doing start the process of, I don't even know where to start? You know, talk to the person that doesn't even know where to begin, where they can get some tools to kind of figure out a game plan.
Oh wow, that question.
I'm bringing you back 3 years ago when I first talked to you about Mike. I want to do this, but I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, I think it all starts with a general knowledge of hey, what's going on in NFL football today? Who's on what team, who's good, who's average, and then, just leveraging the ESPN or Yahoo or any, RotoWire, any of those sites have various cheat sheets you can use. For instance, top 300, which they'll rank them, number 1 to number 300 in order of who they think is the best overall players. And then they have cheat sheets broken down by position, which is generally the one that I use. And then it's just a matter of how many running backs and wide receivers and what have you does your league have? Does it offer a flex, which is where it's one of your roster spots where you could put in a wide receiver, running back. It could be a tight end. Some leagues have 2 quarterbacks, which is just crazy. I've never done that before. And then, it's just a matter of, who's there when it's your draft pick. For me, I like to go 3 running backs in a row a lot of times to start. It just depends, how the draft is going and who's available at that time.
Gotcha. We're talking with Mike Murray, draft guru regarding all things fantasy football. Let's kind of, because one of the things then, let's get back to our 200 level course load here now that we've gone through a couple of the basics. What you said is maybe go to ESPN.com or Yahoo, go to the fantasy football page, and you can print out the cheat sheets is what you're saying. You print out one, and you click on whether it's a standard league or a PPR league, and then you either get your top 300 or your top position players. You print it out because as the draft is going on, you're crossing the names off so you can keep track of who's available and who's not and who you need on your team. So that's basically the best cheat sheet, right? That's the best way to get started. Print off the sheet, get some general knowledge, and just let it rip, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can, and obviously, you can do mock drafts on ESPN or Yahoo, which is basically a simulated draft. You have drafts where you could have a random draft position, or you can pick which draft position you want. That way, if, say, you have the 3rd pick in your draft and you want to kind of do some practice, if you will, at that position, then you can do that. And then the other cheat sheet, obviously, is the auction cheat sheet. So that's going to give you the values as opposed to where they think you should pick the players. So if they think Adrian Peterson should be the number 1 pick for the auction style, they're going to say, we think he should go, in a standard league where you start at $200, he should go for $61 or what have you.
Gotcha. You're talking about practice.
Yeah, I know that.
I just want to play this.
I'm not shoving it aside, like it don't mean anything. I know it's important. I do. I honestly do. But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice?
Allen Iverson, of course. Yeah, but the mock drafts are good because the timing and the tempo of how the draft takes place, that's something that you really can't prepare for until you've been through it. And when that clock starts ticking down and you don't have your notes organized, going through a couple of practice rounds will really help you get your act together. So, who is the number 1 draft pick this year? Let's, like I said, let's get to the 200 level stuff. If you're slated to be the number 1 pick, is Adrian Peterson a lock? Because I remember I got him off of a knee surgery last year in the 4th round, Mike, and he just dominated, helped me win my league. Is AP a consensus number 1 pick if you have the 1st pick in this year's draft?
Yeah, he really is, Brian. The main reason is at the position, which right now I'm on ESPN.com looking at their standard league cheat sheet. So this is just a basic, starter league or the most basic league that ESPN offers. So looking at the running backs, really after the top 12 or 13 running backs, it does kind of drop down to a different level. Other positions like quarterback or wide receiver are extremely deep this year.
Let me back up. You said it drops off after what, 12 running backs?
Again, this is just my opinion, but I think around 12 or 13, maybe around the Frank Gore area, that's where I think it just kind of drops off just a little bit to like the 2nd tier. Whereas wide receivers or quarterbacks, you can look down very far and you can still get great value later on in the draft.
So how many good wide receivers do you think before it drops down in a tier where it's worth, when you start getting to that point and some of the guys are going, might say, all right, look, I got to take a guy now because I'm not going to get someone even remotely close to this level if I wait till the next round or another one. How many do you have to go? How many good wide receivers? You said 12, 13 running backs in your opinion. How many good wide receivers?
I would say wide receivers, top tier, you're looking at maybe 11 or 12 again, but here's the thing with wide receivers is I can look down to wide receiver 20, between 20 and 5, and those are still very good value, whereas opposed to running backs looking around 20 or so, I'm kind of questioning, the depth there. So I just think that it's more important to get one, or probably at least two really good running backs in the draft.
Gotcha. And you said it's a deep year for quarterbacks, right?
Oh, yeah, quarterbacks is it's easily 12 deep as far as I'd be completely happy all the way down to Tony Romo, who I actually love Tony Romo this year. He actually faces based on last year's fantasy defenses, he faces the easiest set of teams as far as how many points they give up to quarterbacks in fantasy leagues last year. So I love him. Basically, most leagues are 10 or 12 teams. So if you can get a great starting quarterback in the 7th or 8th round, Tony Romo, there's a ton of depth there.
And you think those quarterbacks will be there until the 7th or 8th round, usually?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've done quite a few mock drafts, and you can get Matthew Stafford, Andrew Luck, Tony Romo, sometimes all the way out to the 8th or 9th round. Some of those guys. Gotcha.
Okay, so then let's talk about strategy as well, because what happens is there will usually be a run on the defenses. One person picks a defense, and then everyone wants to pick their defense. But sometimes they're picking them way too early. At what point do you think it makes sense to pick a defense and a kicker for that matter? Because that kind of rounds out a lot of the team here, defense and kicker.
Sure. Well, if we're looking at a standard league, I believe it's 15 or 16 total people you have on your team. Kickers, I would say, don't ever take a kicker any earlier than the second to last round. Sure, there's a few really good kickers there, but most of the kickers at the end of the year are going to end up with fairly similar points. So definitely never reach for a kicker earlier than the second to last round. As far as defenses, again, there's maybe 3 or 4 fairly dominant defenses this year, but defenses really change year in and year out. So, for instance, ESPN has the Seahawks as the number 1 defense. I actually looked; they have a little bit tougher schedule than people think this year. So again, they're ranked number 1 here, but that's just a ranking. You really need to go off of your gut. Look at the schedule. I actually like the Houston Texans a lot this year as my number 1 defense.
Oh, Texans number 1, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, let's go into this then, because a lot of it is, all right, fine, we know Tony Romo's been in the league for a while, Calvin Johnson, Adrian Peterson, we know some of the badasses. We know some of the people that are just, you're kind of going to count on. Let's start with, let's see, normally awesome players that you think are going to be primed for some lousy years and maybe push them back a little bit. Let's start that way.
Okay.
Overrated. I guess maybe anticipating a subpar year from. And let's just pick a couple. Quarterbacks, running backs, whatever you're thinking. Guys that are normally more reliable than you think they will be this year, whether it's injury, system, injuries to the offensive line, different coordinator. For whatever reason, which running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks do you think are going to have subpar seasons from what most people normally expect?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to make this snappy for you. So let's just start at quarterback. I'll just give you one guy that I'm not huge on this year is Tom Brady. It's probably not a huge surprise, but he's lost multiple weapons. Brandon Lloyd's gone. Wes Welker's gone. Obviously, we don't know Aaron Hernandez is gone.
Yep.
Rob Gronkowski currently is injured. So I watched him the Patriots-Lions game the other night. He did not look very good.
No.
Not saying he'll have a terrible year, but for where he's drafted at, I'm going to pass, especially with the depth this year at quarterback.
Okay.
Let's see here.
But Brady would obviously. So if you print up one of like the top quarterbacks or the top 300 players, if you see a player start to slide for a while, it's still worth a gamble on a few later rounds where you can get some value on it. You're not saying don't draft this guy if he's there in the 4th or 5th round for some reason, right?
Oh yeah, I mean if Tom Brady is still there in the 6th or 7th round, I mean you don't really hesitate there. Obviously, if you have a quarterback already, that's kind of a wasted draft pick. But if you don't have a quarterback and he's there 6th, 7th round, you have to take him.
Yeah.
The value is just way too good. He's still going to have a great year. I'm just saying for Tom Brady's normal standards, for all the weapons he's lost, I'm a little hesitant to take him, and I actually haven't picked him at all. And I've already done 3 of my leagues this year, 3 of my drafts.
Any injury concerns with RG3? Do you think he's primed for a bust-out breakthrough season, or are you concerned about the injury?
I'm not concerned about the injury at all. I think he has a great year. The only thing, I would think that his rushing yards and rushing touchdowns may come down just a little bit, because I'm assuming his coaches have told him, listen, you've got to be a little bit more careful out there. But then again, he's young. He might be ready to go. So that one really could go either way. But I think he's got some upside this year.
Yeah, I was looking at Eli Manning. He was looking kind of rough. Their offense doesn't really seem to be clicking on all cylinders at all. Any other quarterbacks you think are a little overrated this year? Maybe only pick them up if they slide way out of their value range.
I think that Ben Roethlisberger is one of those guys. He's dependent on Mike Wallace for some time now. He was their big deep threat. Now they've got a bunch of smaller wide receivers. I believe their tight end, Heath Miller, I believe he's out for the year. A lot of questions on the offensive line. He's getting up there in age as far as Roethlisberger a little bit. So he's a guy I would definitely shy away from as well.
Okay. If there's nobody else you think is primed for a lower year, which quarterbacks you think are set to have a more breakthrough season?
Well, I think that Matthew Stafford, he's a guy, he's kind of a wild card. He has the potential, we already know that, to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. The question is always,
how many picks?
Do they have enough at wide receiver? I mean, they've obviously got Megatron. After that, they've got a couple random guys, Ryan Broyles and Nate Burleson. But I really think the addition of Reggie Bush is going to kind of open up that offense, and I think that you could see Stafford get back to where he was a couple years ago.
Any other quarterbacks? You think even if they're ranked, pick a number 200 in the thing. Anyone you think you would jump in and pick earlier than maybe the general consensus of ESPN? People you think are going to outperform?
Might not be like a new on anyone's radar, but I actually think that Michael Vick has a pretty good year this year. The reason I say that is they have a lot of weapons on the team. I think that LaShawn McCoy, their running back, is healthy. Chip Kelly coming in from University of Oregon as their head coach now. I watched some preseason games with them, and that offense is definitely going to trick a lot of people. We all know that Vic has the capability to have great games. Now, is he going to do it game in and game out every year this year, or every game this year? I mean, probably not, but where you can get him at, again, really late, maybe 12th, 13th round, there's a ton of value right there.
Okay. If there are no other quarterbacks that you think are going to maybe pop out and have a breakthrough season, we can talk running backs as well. People you think are overrated at running back.
All right. Let's see. Overrated.
And by overrated, I just mean, maybe a nagging injury is going to lower their production, or the injury to right tackle is really going to hurt them at the end of the day. Or, I'm not really saying the person is overrated, just people you expect to have down seasons from. I'm just making sure I'm trying to say that properly, what the answer I'm looking for.
Yeah, one guy I won't touch in any of my leagues unless he's there in the 12th, 13th, 14th round is I don't want nothing to do with Oakland Raiders running back Darren McFadden. I just think that team is absolutely awful right now. They have zero talent at all. They have no wide receivers, no quarterbacks. They just don't have a lot to work with. And McFadden's been off and on injured the last 2 or 3 years or so. So he's just one guy I'm just going to completely shy away from. I would recommend not picking him again unless he's there very, very late.
Okay, and see, that's what I mean. That's the rationale. It's because the quarterback. It's because injuries on the line. It's because of lack of depth at wide receiver. It's not necessarily and his injury being injury prone. Who else at running back you think that's normally because people are now concerned about Arian Foster. People are concerned about him. Kind of some nagging injuries. Do you pick him in the top 5 or the top 10 if he's there with the nagging injury? Does that play a role?
It certainly plays a role. I mean, I think Arian Foster right now has 2 or 3 different injuries he's dealing with. I think they had to give him an injection the other day for him to deal with his back pain. So wasting the number 2 overall pick in my fantasy football draft on a guy who supposedly is going to be ready to go by week 1, but doesn't get out there and takes some nasty hits and he's out for the year. So that's a bit of a question mark. I would say if you take Arian Foster in your draft, you definitely handcuff him which is basically taking his backup by the name of Ben Tate, who is their number 2 running back. That's been going on for several years now with taking Ben Tate. Anyone who does fantasy football often knows that if you take Foster, you got to take Ben Tate.
Well, okay, so that Ben Tate would be one of the underrated. If it might be even worth reaching up a little bit to get a Ben Tate. Who else at running back you think has seen better days?
I've seen better days, meaning I don't like them this year?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Not a huge fan of, let's see here, DeMarco Murray, running back, Dallas Cowboys. Another guy who's been battling some injuries. At this point, I really think that the Cowboys are more of a passing-oriented team. Watching them over the last couple of years or so, it seems like they tend to shy away from the run at times. So he's a guy, I'm not really touching him. I don't want to say you don't want to take these players, but where they're going to normally go at, I wouldn't take them there. Maybe a couple rounds later if they're still there. If you need them at that position.
Let me ask you this. Because this is something when you print off a cheat sheet off ESPN.com for fantasy football or something. Are they taking into consideration the up-to-date injury situations and problems as they rank them in top 300, or do they not do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Yahoo does it. Excuse me, but ESPN. They do update their cheat sheets, I believe, on a daily basis. So,
okay. That's very good information to know then. So right before the draft, print the latest version, not something from 2-3 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you're going to print out a cheat sheet, wait until the last second if you can, or if you want to print one out and make some notes or whatever, that's fine. But you may want to print another one out the day of your draft and then just copy those notes over. That way the rankings are accurate.
That's very good advice. Because that was a nagging question that some of these newbies that I've been talking with, I didn't really have the answer for. I wasn't certain if it was updated. And you're saying it's updated every day. Okay, so we had some of the overrated: Darren McFadden, Arian Foster, DeMarco Murray. Maybe we can expect a little bit less from them normally. As far as underrated, we have Ben Tate. Who else do we think is going to kind of step it up? I have a hunch you're going to say Eddie Lacy, but I have a rookie segment question I want to get to with that. But what running backs do you think are primed to just break through this year and just dominate?
I don't know about dominate, but one guy I like a lot is St. Louis Rams running back Daryl Richardson. Steven Jackson's finally gone. He's with Atlanta now. Daryl Richardson is a guy he's got a really big boost when he runs through the hole. A lot of speed, a lot of quickness. I like their offense a lot. I think that he fits well for what they do, some of the screen passes they run and what have you. Again, I'm not saying he's going to dominate, 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns, but for where you can get him at, which is, I think, around the 10th round or so, maybe 9th or 10th round, he's going to be their starter, and I really like him a lot this year.
Okay. Anyone else? Good value picks at running back.
Another guy, Giovanni Bernard, currently ranked number 29th in running backs per ESPN. He's with the Cincinnati Bengals. Rookie, I believe, out of University of North Carolina. Another guy with a lot of speed. And the reason I like him is they're the Bengals starting running back, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. He just kind of seems to be last year he didn't have the greatest season, and I know Bernard's had a great preseason, so I feel like at some point during the year Bernard might take over the starting job. And again, another guy you can get pretty late in your draft and just put on your bench and see what happens.
Good point. What about at wide receiver? Who do you think might drop off a little bit more this year compared to how they're normally functioning?
Yeah, I would say, let's see here. Who I not like this year? I don't like Hakeem Nicks from the New York Giants.
He killed me last year. I mean, I had him, and I had expectations, and that nagging foot injury, and then when he did come back, he was hardly back. Maybe one or two. I think his biggest game was when I finally benched him, and then he had one big game, and then you're a starter again, and then he sucked again. I'm like, Hakeem Nicks, I am just fed up with you. So you're agreeing with what I experienced last year. Maybe pass on Hakeem.
Yeah, I mean, between the injuries, the fact that I believe their number 3 receiver now is a guy named Ruben Randall, who's having a great preseason. I almost just feel like at some point Nicks is just going to get kind of phased out, whether it's being benched or just kind of, down to the point where he's only getting 2 or 3 catches a game. That kind of happened last year, so that's a guy I'm not really touching in my leagues at all.
Gotcha. Who else? I mean, some of the most consistent players. I mean, you got Wes Welker, you got Megatron. I mean, there's a lot of good receivers. Who is going to kind of tail off this year?
Another guy I think that kind of drops off. He's had a pretty good last few years. Eric Decker, receiver, Denver Broncos. And the main reason I say that is a guy by the name of Wes Welker. Between Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker, I gotta think those are Peyton Manning's number 1 and 2 targets. I think Decker has a decent year. You know, he could get more of a bench player or a low-end flex player if you want. I think that based on the last 2 seasons and the additional Welker, I think that his production might drop off a little bit.
And of course, the flex player is the position on your team, depending on how the commissioner sets it up, where you can either play a running back or a wide receiver. Does it always make sense to play a running back in that position because they get if it's a PPR league, or does it just depend on the matchups?
It really just depends on who you get. You know, if you can get a guy like Darren Sproles and put him in your flex, and it's a PPR league, that's a great value right there. It would really just depend who you can get, whether you put him at the flex or not.
Okay, so we got Hakeem Nicks, Eric Decker maybe dropping off a little bit. Anyone else on the radar that you're just going to kind of pass on, like kind of like you said with Darren McFadden? You're not even going to touch that kid. And Tom Brady, if he slips too far, you got to grab him, but you're not going to go out of your way by any means. Any other receivers that you're just not feeling it from this year?
Hey Brian, you're breaking up a little bit. You still there?
Oh yeah. I can hear you just fine. I was saying if there's any other wide receivers that you're not feeling it from this year.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, man. Your phone's breaking up.
All right, hang on. Let me try this again. Let me give you a buzz right back. We'll get him right back onto the program. It's just kind of weird. I can hear him just fine.
Hello?
Hey, I could hear you just fine. Can you hear me any better this time?
Yeah, you're good to go. Might have just been a little bit of a bad reception.
It's all right. I was talking about bad reception. Any other wide receivers? That's called a segue, Mike. Any other wide receivers you think are going to be bad receptions for their teams and fantasy football owners this year, aside from maybe Decker and Nicks?
Let's see here. I'm not a huge fan of Greg Jennings this year. Coming into a new system, they did draft a guy by the name of Cordarrelle Patterson. I think that he could take some of the receptions. And obviously with Minnesota, they're going to be a run-heavy team. So I think the production you normally would see from Greg Jennings, probably you want to, make sure that you don't expect what he's done the last few seasons there in Green Bay.
Yeah, I had him as a flex position for me last year. He was helpful for a couple of games. What about wide receivers you think are going to maybe burst through? That are going to have really strong seasons, wide receivers that you're going to expect a lot out of. Maybe you'll reach a little higher to grab.
The one guy that I really like is a really deep sleeper, just because of the preseason he's had and all the losses that the Patriots have had. A guy by the name of Kenbrell Tompkins, listed at number 53 on ESPN's overall wide receivers. Kind of a prototype wide receiver, a bigger guy, got some speed. I think currently listed as the number 1 wide receiver for the Patriots. You can get him in the very late round, maybe 12, 13, 14, probably because no one really is counting on him yet. But I think the other night he had 8 catches or 7 catches for over 100 yards, and Brady looked his way quite a few times. So that would be a huge sleeper. I think I've gotten him in all of my leagues so far.
Oh, okay. And what's his name again? Tompkins?
Yeah, Kenbrell Tompkins. Yep.
Gotcha. Who else you think is gonna impress some people with some surprising value at wide receiver?
I actually like Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Deshaun Jackson.
He was another one. He was another one that bugged me last year. I had him on. I just finally had to drop him. Couldn't even take it anymore. But you think he's primed to get back on the horse and be productive like he was 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia, they're pretty thin in wide receiver. They've got Jason Avant, Riley Cooper, some guys who are just journeyman players. So Deshaun Jackson is their true number 1. I expect them to really go to him a lot. He's a huge deep threat. I know Michael Vick trusts him quite a bit. They don't have a ton of talent at tight end, so I think between LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson, and again, a lot of these people that I'm telling you about, another thing the reason I bring up Deshaun Jackson is where you can get him at in the draft is so important. You can get him later, and I think he has a good season, so the value is just really good there.
Gotcha. Now, any other players that you kind of sleepers at wide receiver, quarterback, or running back that we haven't covered before we move to the tight ends?
Let's see here. I do like probably for wide receiver, specifically in a PPR league. Again, that's points per reception. Tavon Austin, rookie out of West Virginia. He plays for the St. Louis Rams. He got several targets from Sam Bradford in their preseason games. So if you're in a PPR league where you can get 1 point per reception, he could be a sleeper. He's got a lot of speed, kind of a Percy Harvin type of player out of the slot. So he would be potentially a good guy. I like him better in a PPR league than a standard league, though.
Oh, okay. Specifically in the PPR league. All right. What about at tight ends? I mean, obviously,
Yep.
Some of the bigger names, Gronkowski and Hernandez, aren't going to be there. At least Gronk for a while. Well, let's start with the flip side. Which tight ends that you're normally getting good work out of might you want to just kind of pass unless you get good value? Who do you think is going to drop off in production this year?
There's two guys that I'm kind of passing on. Number one is Vernon Davis from the 49ers. I think I saw a stat last year that when Kaepernick took over at quarterback, the amount of receptions or targets he had over the last 6 games of the regular season were very low, like maybe 2 or 3 each game. For Vernon Davis, that's extremely low. I expect it to maybe pick back up a little bit this year, but I'm passing on him. The other guy is Antonio Gates from the San Diego Chargers, a guy who's getting older, had some injuries. Phillip Rivers, unfortunately, the last season or two hasn't seemed to look his way anywhere near as much as previous years. I think that San Diego, they've got some decent young wide receivers, not a great offensive line, so I would expect Gates' production to drop off again. I still do like him if you can get him in the very late rounds. I do like Gates, but I wouldn't. In previous years he was the number 1 or 2 tight end, so clearly there's been a drop off in production.
What about Gonzalez? He's getting old, but TG's coming back for the Falcons again. I mean, do you still see him having a solid year, or do you think he's going to drop off?
I see him having another solid year. The thing about tight ends this year, extremely thin at tight end. So we're not talking about quarterback or wide receiver where there's a ton of depth where you can get guys that are great in the late rounds. Really at tight end, you've got Jimmy Graham, who should be absolutely dominant this year. Gronkowski should be good once he comes back. We don't know when that's going to be. And then after Gonzalez and Jason Witten, that's when it, for me, drops off to that second tier as I was talking about earlier. But it drops off big time. I mean, they're very, very thin at tight end this year. One guy I like as a deep sleeper, I like Green Bay Packers tight end for Michael Finley, having a great preseason, a ton of targets. He's having a great training camp. He's in very good shape. He had a lot of drops last year, but in that offense, and especially where you can get him, how late you can get him in the draft, I'm going with Michael Finley this year because I'm not going to waste my second-round pick on Jimmy Graham. I think he has a great year, but I want running backs in round 2, not a tight end.
Let me ask you that. When you find someone that you say, okay, maybe in the 10th round they'll still be there, is there enough value when you're picking these guys where if they're according to the top 300 or whatever, if you say, all right, looks like they'll probably be there in the 10th round, does that usually mean they're worth jumping up an extra round to grab because you think they're going to do it, or only if they're there at that round where they're projected? Are you understanding the way I'm asking this question?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. It really just depends. So if you think that Matthew Stafford is going to be there in round 6, and all of a sudden someone takes him before you were going to grab him, I wouldn't panic because you know that there's cushion below him. I like Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, and Tony Romo. Now, if you're going to wait until Tony Romo, now that's when it drops off. So if everyone above and including Tony Romo is gone, and because you waited too long, then you're stuck with what I consider the second-tier quarterbacks because you waited too long. So what you really want to do is kind of give yourself a cushion. If you like Matthew Stafford, make sure you're comfortable with someone below him in case he's gone, which in his case, I would certainly be comfortable with Luck, Romo, or Wilson.
Oh, okay. So that's a good way to look at it then. If you have 2 or 3 people, well, I guess maybe at least 2. If there's at least 2 people in the tier that you're looking for, you're always comfortable saying, all right, as long as one of these 2 people is there, I'll be fine. But if you're down to the last one, be like, look, it's time for my tight end. It's time for my quarterback. I don't want the next tier. Gotta go here, even if it's maybe a little out of place. You can't really push it too far. Interesting. Okay, so then it's thin at tight ends this year. We got the underrated guys, and then you said basically the 4 that you like. Who do you like as a sleeper at tight end?
Sleeper at tight end. Actually, I'm going to go with your Cleveland Browns there, Brian. Mr. Jordan Cameron.
He's been looking good.
Having a great preseason. Brandon Whedon looking his way quite a bit. Again, I don't think he's going to bust out and have 900 yards and 10 touchdowns, but again, you can probably get Jordan Cameron in probably one of the last few rounds of the draft as your tight end, and I would think that 600 yards and maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns isn't out of the realm of possibility, and that's pretty decent production. Those are close to the numbers that Jermichael Finley had last year. So again, if you're going to wait to get a tight end until very, very late in the draft, a guy like Jordan Cameron or even Fred Davis from Washington Redskins, those could be some late round value if you want to fill your tight end that late.
All right, and then as far as let's go to defense. I mean, you said there's a couple of good defensive teams this year, as you see it.
Yeah. A lot of times, I base specifically my defenses off of their strength of schedule. So this year, I think I looked on Roto World or RotoWire.com. What they do is they break down each individual position by strength of schedule. So last year they broke down, let's just say, defenses by the teams that they're playing this year. How did they do last year? Against opposing defenses. Team I like a lot is the Houston Texans. I think they were 5th as far as having the easiest schedule, and they've added Ed Reed as well, a great safety from the Baltimore Ravens. So I do like them a lot, and I also like the Denver Broncos. I know Von Miller, their Pro Bowl linebacker, is out for the first 6 games. But,
that's big.
I think they also have a decent strength of schedule and a lot of talent on that defense.
Okay, and as far as defense that's normally pretty good, but you might shy away from for a couple of reasons this year.
Let's see. Probably the Baltimore Ravens. Again, kind of an obvious one. They've lost. Ed Reed's gone. Ray Lewis is gone. I don't believe they have a ton of depth at cornerback.
Paul Kruger is gone as well. Paul Kruger went to the Browns.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So they're just kind of hurting for some talent there. So yeah, the Ravens have been dominant in fantasy for years now, and that's a team that I certainly see falling off.
Okay, and kicker. What do we got left here? We're down to kickers.
Yeah, again, kicker. I wouldn't put a lot of time in the kicker. Basically, print out your cheat sheet. When the last round comes up, or maybe the second to last round, if you're pretty comfortable with your roster and you feel like you've got, and you know what, don't take your bench for granted. Make sure you stock it up with running backs and wide receivers. Have one backup quarterback. You really don't need more than that. And you don't necessarily need a backup tight end. You can always pick up one off the waiver wire just for the one bye week. But anyways, back to kickers. Probably wait till the last round. But the guy I like a lot, Blair Walsh from the Minnesota Vikings. The kid's got a huge leg on him. They play indoors, so come the winter months, he'll be in a controlled environment. So I think I've got Blair Walsh 2 out of my 3 leagues so far. I like him a lot.
Okay, and kickers that you think are maybe gonna falter off. Phil Dawson goes to San Francisco, and I mean guys that are normally pretty reliable that you just don't see it from this year.
Well, that's a tough one. Kickers. There could be the kicker who's not even ranked on here that could end up being the number. I think Blair Walsh was a rookie last year. No one even knew who he was, and he ended up being the number 1 kicker last year. That's really tough to tell. Oh God, I honestly don't even have one.
So maybe with that one, just kind of watch it as the weeks go by, because that is the importance too. Yeah, you talked about the waiver wire. You got to pick up people that, hey, this guy's had 2 or 3 great weeks, and my guy's been underperforming, or someone gets injured, and you say, you know what, I'm going to drop this guy off my bench and pick up this guy who's looking hot, and if he keeps it up, I'm just going to put him in the starting lineup. I guess let's talk now about rookies, because every year. Is it going to be Doug Martin that has a really solid campaign that kind of comes out and it's like, wow, that rookie really performed. Trent Richardson, he really performed. Andrew Luck, pretty solid player. Not so bad. Who do you see coming out this year as in the rookie class that might be undervalued or unknown? And maybe they should be a little bit more known, depending on if they're going to be the starter, if you think they're going to get a lot of touches, and you think that their team's strong enough to get them a lot of fantasy points. What rookies do you have your eye on?
Let's see. I'll probably start with DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. I believe he's going to start the season opposite Andre Johnson as the number 2 wide receiver. Kid's got a lot of talent. I think that offense is set up where, at some point down the road he could potentially take over for Andre Johnson. So I like him a lot this year. That'd probably be it for wide receiver. I don't think there's a ton of rookie talent at tight end, or really even quarterback this year. I mean, you've got E.J. Manuel and Geno Smith are the rookies that are, were the big high-end draft picks, but I don't see a lot of production there. The rookie class this year was kind of subpar as opposed to last year, where we saw a lot of people kind of busting out, Doug Martin, Andrew Luck, guys like that. Like you were saying, it's just not really there this year, Like I mentioned,
what do you think?
Austin.
Yeah, I was going to say, aside from Tavon Austin, what do you think about Cordarrelle Patterson with the Vikings or Robert Woods with the Bills? You did say Austin, but any of those guys do anything for you? Patterson, Woods?
Yeah, I love Robert Woods. He had a great career at USC. The only concern there is, their number 1 is Stevie Johnson, and I think Stevie Johnson usually has about 1,000 yards or so, 70 catches. But I'm concerned that they brought in a new head coach who really wants to run the ball with C.J. Spiller. The fact that Woods will be the number 2 receiver, I would temper your expectations, maybe 50 catches or so. Cordarrelle Patterson, another guy I like a lot, but again, they're in a really run-heavy offense.
Yeah.
Even Greg Jennings, might not have more than 60 catches or so. So I think Patterson, again, is probably going to go undrafted in a lot of leagues.
Maybe wait
Woods
for the waiver wire.
Deal.
Yeah,
really
waiver wire. If they start doing well, pick them up as they get going. If one of your guys gets hurt or something. But I think there are some running backs that are rookies that you got Le'Veon Bell, who he's injured, which is a really strong blow for the Steelers, which I'm happy about because I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. But you do have some guys up there. Bernard with the Bengals, who you already mentioned. How do you feel about Franklin and Lacey on your Packers?
Supposedly John Franklin's having an absolutely terrible training camp. I'm not sure what the deal is. I know that it probably doesn't help that when he gets in the game, he's behind our 3rd offensive line. So that's probably not helping a lot. Eddie Lacy, I think that he looks absolutely dominant. The problem is that a lot of times when you see him out there right now, he's behind our 2nd offensive line. So again, he's not with the big boys. And again, Green Bay certainly is not going to be a dominant running team by any means, but I think that Lacey has the speed and the power. I could see 9 or 10 touchdowns this year. Maybe not 1,000 yards, maybe 800 or 900, just because we're more of a passing team. But I like Eddie Lacy as a flex player, or maybe just your first bench guy.
And what about Monty Ball on the Broncos?
Oh, you said Monty Ball?
Yeah, on the Broncos.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why he's not their starter from day one. I think Noshawn Moreno is currently hurt. And then their other running back would be Ronnie Hillman, who's kind of a smaller scat-type back, like a Darren Sproles, but not exactly your, first and second down back who's going to pound the ball. I think Monty Ball went to, I believe, University of Wisconsin, and he was a pretty powerful runner there. So I think if Denver can mix the pass up and get the play action going, should open up Monty Ball. Maybe for 1,000 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns, I like him this year.
Nice. Well, you know, I think we've kind of gone through who we're expecting for the slate. What else have we not covered that you kind of want to give some advice to people, or some players you want to avoid or play? Is there anything we haven't covered? I tried to kind of go through this as best I could think of, but you're the expert. You tell me. What else do you think people need to know this year?
Well, one thing that I actually catch myself doing a lot that it's not good is you have to watch out for your bye weeks. So let's say you take Arian Foster, and then you come back around and you take Matt Forte, and then 10 minutes later you look and you realize, oh no, both of my number 1 and number 2 running back are on the same bye week. So whoever's playing you in week 8 is now licking their chops, going, oh, he's not going to have, you know, Foster or Forte in that bye week. So, or I mean, in that week. So just watch the bye weeks on all your players that you're going to start. Make sure that they're not the same. That way you're not really vulnerable on certain weeks. And then again, just make sure you've got a solid bench. Don't come out there with a bunch of stiffs and guys who aren't going to get any carries or any receptions or any reps.
Gotcha. Well, Mike, you got 7 leagues you're juggling, pal. 7 leagues.
Yep.
Let me ask you, how did it go last year? With your leagues, were you able to?
I'm sorry. What's that?
Yeah, how did you do in your leagues last year? Where did you come in?
I think I made the playoffs. I think I was in 5 or 6 leagues. I think I made the playoffs in 4 of them. Did not win any of them, but I got kind of blindsided by a couple teams in the playoffs who didn't have great teams, and of course you run into them the one week where you know, Antonio Gates has 40 points or something like that. So, but that's the way fantasy football goes. You could draft the greatest team in the world, and you just never know what's going to happen. That's why it's called fantasy football.
Well, you know what? That is a good point, because I started off 0-6 last year, and I ended up winning my league. You know, I mean, you can go from 0-6 where all your team, everybody's hurt, everybody's underperforming. It's just you run into buzzsaws when people have 40-point games. You're like, you've got to be kidding me. I cannot catch a break. You can draft, you can strategize as much as you want, but it really is just a roll of the dice. A lot of times you don't know. So, I mean, reiterate that point. Just and make another comment or two about, strategies when things aren't going so well. Talk about the luck component, the luck, the gambling, the roll of the dice component of this game, because newbies don't really get it until you've been through it a few times.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it's fantasy football is, you're gonna draft your team, put them out there, and Calvin Johnson could be projected to have 20 points, and he could come out and have 1. It's just you play the best guys each week who have the best matchups. You got to get some luck. You got to work the waiver wire. If things aren't going your way, you start off 0-5, 0-6. Sometimes you don't want to jump the gun and trade away Adrian Peterson or Aaron Rodgers. Those are the best players at their position. So, unless they're just having horrible years, which those guys probably won't, they're going to pick it up at some point. You just got to kind of be patient. Not jump the gun like I've unfortunately done the last couple of years and just traded away good players after 2 weeks. So just be patient, put your best guys out there, and hope for the best, pretty much.
Well, hey, Mike, I really quick as we let you go here, do you recognize this music playing in the background? Yeah, this is a bonus question for you, Mike. Do you recognize the music?
Yeah, that's fun. I forget the name of it, though.
Calm Before the Storm. Twist of Nothing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that is Mike Murray playing the guitar on this tune. And I'm playing the drums. Yeah, Mike and I go back a long time. Grew up and played a lot of baseball and football and basketball. Basically everything we could play. Every single sport, we played it. And now you're definitely working this fantasy angle, and you've been my kind of phone a friend, kind of explaining how the game works, and so much of it is chance. You can be the best prepared as you want, but really, it's not up to you half the time. It's up to how the players perform and the roll of the dice, luck, and just see what happens. So, I'll tell you what, Mike, thanks for doing this preseason fantasy football draft preview special, because there's a lot of people that might be able to use some of your advice. So I appreciate you joining us, buddy. Maybe we could jump in sometime during the season and kind of give some updates with some matchups, and if you have a few minutes, we could just do a quick hit from time to time, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that works for me, man. Anytime.
All right, perfect. Well, hey, Mike, thanks again, and we'll be talking again soon. Appreciate your time. That is Mike Murray, everybody. You can hear him playing guitar on this song. Calm Before the Storm by Twist of Nothing. Had to play the intro and outro with this because Mike is performing on this song. And that's me drumming on the song, actually. Good times. But hey, thanks for joining us here on the Unhappy Hour. My name's Brian Engelman, and hopefully you enjoyed and got a little bit of information, helpful information about the fantasy football ins and outs, players to avoid, players to go after, strategies. Do us a favor, check us out online, thenewamericanmedia.com. Go on Facebook and search The New American Media and like our page. Go on Twitter and follow us at American_media_ and subscribe to youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Appreciate your time. We're going to talk some Cleveland Browns probably tomorrow. Take care, y'all.